Hey guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing a mukbang and just talking about the digestive system while we're doing it. We thought that would be cool and it would go together, so enjoy. We're going to be eating some Einstein, some fruit over here for the healthy ones, and some coffee. All right, so Gabby, go ahead.
So basically, we're going to start this off by dividing the digestive system into 4 groups: the ingestion/propulsion of it, mechanical, chemical, and then the defecation of it. And to start off, basically the main function of digestion is a combination of mechanical and chemical functions that work together to ingest a food. So, so that our body can use the nutrients that the food provides in the most beneficial way. So us humans mostly take the food through our mouths, and the actual process of taking the food into the mouth is called ingestion, and we ingest our food by chewing, and the act of chewing itself is done by the teeth, which aid in the breaking down of the large chunks of food. I'm so repetitive. The chunks of food, and then we use teeth. Then the saliva comes in, and basically what it does is softens the food down. Softens the food down so that it's easier to swallow. The tongue is another part that helps in ingestion, which helps us enjoy the food that we eat with the taste buds, and also moves the bolus of food down through a series of peristaltic movements that move, again, that bolus down the alimentary canal. Your turn.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about the mechanical digestion aspect. She did talk about the chewing aspect a little bit, but it includes the chewing, churning, and peristalsis movement. So with the chewing of the mouth, basically food is broken down in the mouth by a grinding action of the teeth, and which is chewing or mastation. The tongue actually pushes the food backwards toward the throat, and where it travels down to the esophagus as a bolus. So the epiglottis prevents the food from going down to the trachea, and it goes down to the esophagus instead. With the churning of the stomach is actually lined with some muscles that physically squeeze and mix the food with digestive juices, and it's called churning. Food is then digested within the stomach for several hours and is turned into this creamy paste called chyme. And eventually the chyme then enters into the small intestine, where absorption occurs, and it enters through the duodenum. And then with the movement of food itself, it's called peristalsis. So basically it's the principal mechanism of movement in the esophagus, although it also occurs in both the stomach and the gut. So basically the continuous segments of the longitudinal smooth muscle rhythmically contract and relax it so that it can move down through your esophagus. And the food is also just moved unidirectionally along the alimentary canal in a quadrilateral directional. So basically mouth to anus.
Okay, so now we will talk about the chemical digestion that occurs. So chemicals are found throughout the GI tract, and they act on specific types of food. So for example, we're eating a lot of carbs right now. So for carb digestion, the starch and disaccharides are ingested, and then they're met with the salivary amylase in the mouth, which is part of the saliva, and that starts the breakdown of the starch. Then there is pancreatic amylase in the small intestine that further breaks it down into oligosaccharides and disaccharides, and then those get broken down into lactose, maltose, and sucrose by brush border enzymes, and then those break down into their component parts. So for lactose, it breaks down into one molecule of galactose and glucose, For maltose, it breaks down into 2 glucose molecules, and then sucrose breaks down into fructose and glucose. And then for fat digestion, the unemulsified triglycerides are ingested through the mouth, and then they're met with lingual lipase in the mouth. And then in the stomach, there is gastric lipase, and in the small intestine, there's pancreatic lipase, and those just break it down into triglycerides or break down the triglycerides into monoglycerides and fatty acids.
Alright, so for absorption, the surface area of the digestive system is really important to the absorption of nutrients, which mostly occurs in the small intestine. The small intestine averages a length of 7 meters and is covered with villi and microvilli, which amounts to 250 square meters of surface area, which really helps with our absorption. Each of these villi have capillaries which directly absorb the nutrients that we digest. The small intestine has 3 sections: the duodenum, which does most of the chemical digestion, the jejunum, which does most of the absorption, and the ileum, which absorbs most of the A, B12, E, and D vitamins. Once the duodenum receives the chyme from the stomach, it can begin the exchange of nutrients and the breakdown of fats. Once the chyme reaches the ileocecal valve, it enters the cecum to the large intestines. Its job is to remove any feces, any water, and bile salts from the feces. Food can spend up to 3 days in our digestive system, and most of the time is spent in the large intestines. So an apple can spend 3 days in our digestive system before it is excreted. Haustral contractions continue to push and mix the feces, and an occasional mass peristalsis contraction further pushes the feces through the large intestines. Once in the rectum, the feces signals the colon and the rectum contracts. The internal anal sphincter relaxes and forces the feces into the anal canal. Here, we run to the bathroom and relax our external anal sphincters as soon as possible.
Well, so that was the overview of the digestive system. We hoped you guys learned something. Thanks for joining us in today's episode of our mukbang, and hope to see you guys next week where we talk about the male reproductive system.